Help support the show by joining the Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. Also, hit that like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content. One of the privileges that I have from doing this job is that I get to hear the input of a bunch of Browns fans on a bunch of different subjects every time that I upload a video. I get to look through these comments. I get to understand what most Browns fans are concerned about, at least the Browns fans in my comment section are concerned about. And sometimes I even get to find out why these things are concerns for certain Browns fans. And the most common and most reasonable comment I get that opposes one of the main things I've been talking about doing, which is the Browns selecting Abdul Carter number 2 overall. The best counter argument I get is from people who are concerned about how awful the offense was last year. And if that repeats itself, the Browns aren't going to be in a very much different position than they were last year, given that they're just not going to win a ton of games when they can only score, 200-something points. So let's talk about that aspect of it, because I think about that a lot, right? The Browns definitely need to do something to the offense to make sure they can score more points. But I think the level of solution that you need to take and the impact of that level of solution differs wildly in my mind versus everybody else's mind, or at least most of the people in the comment section. Because I do agree, the Browns absolutely have to address the offense. Last year, the Cleveland Browns scored only 258 points total, which was the lowest number in the NFL by a bit of a margin, right? And that is something that the Browns cannot repeat. We cannot be a 250-point scoring team and expect any success, even if we have the world's greatest defense behind this football team. To put that 258-point number in context, tell you how atrocious it is, the best defense in the NFL last year was the Los Angeles Chargers, and in terms of points allowed, they gave up 301 points. The Philadelphia Eagles defense gave up 303 points. Even if the Browns had an elite defense last year, they still would have been underwater when it came to points. If we go back to 2023 and look at where the Browns were in 2023, they would still be underwater if they played to that level. The Browns gave up 362 points in 2023, and the lowest defense in terms of points allowed was the Baltimore Ravens. So even if the Browns did an incredible job of getting teams off the field, most defenses, they would be underwater. The only defenses that would allow less than 258 points in a season would be like the 85 Bears, who I think would give up about 12.4 points a game, a similar number for like the 2000 Ravens. So unless you're talking about having an historic defense, you got to do something to address the offensive side of the ball. And when you hear people constantly only talk about the number 1 overall pick or the number 2 overall pick in terms of the Cleveland Browns, and they're talking about a defensive player in Abdul Carter, it's easy to hear that and think that nobody wants to address the offensive side of the ball and fix this offense that only scored 258 points. But I don't think that's true, right? Drafting Abdul Carter at 2 does not mean that you're going to completely ignore the offense. And I think the fixes for the offense, even the ones you're not excited for, are things that could dramatically change how the season goes for the Cleveland Browns, and are good bets to be able to do so. Let's go back to that number, right? The Browns only scored 258 points last year. That was the lowest number in all of football. Now, if we take out the Jameis Winston games and just look at the Deshaun Watson DTR starts, then we get an even lower number, right? Just the DTR Deshaun Watson starts, the Browns scored 223 total points if you average it out for 17 games. That would be an average of 13.11 a game, a number that I don't even believe the 85 Bears can save you from, right? That is a atrocious amount of quarterback play or lack of quarterback play. When Jameis or Bailey Zapp, just to show you how bad those two were last year, when Jameis or Bailey Zapp played, the Browns averaged 17.5 points. That's about 300 points, 298 points a game. Put in perspective how bad that number is and how avoidable that number is ultimately. Like, the Browns were so bad at quarterback that it was actually avoidable, very avoidable to be not as bad as they were. Jameis Winston and Bailey Zapp, if you look at their numbers, they got about 17.5 points a game, which is about 297 or 298, right? Like, it's right in between those two decimal spots, which is significantly higher than all of the difference between what the Browns had last year total and what they would have had if they would have stuck it out with Deshaun Watson or DTR, statistically speaking. Which is to say, improving upon that 258 total points number should not be difficult, because they would have significantly improved on that number if they just would have started Jameis Winston. And I know that opinions tend to vary on Jameis, but Jameis is Jameis, right? Jameis is not a starting level quarterback in the NFL. He is somebody who is a decent backup option for a specific set of circumstances. Like, he's not really like, it's not like you had prime Pat Mahomes in there and you raised that number. So what I'm saying is the level of difficulty to raise that total points scored number is not that difficult. If you bring in Kirk Cousins, if you bring in Russell Wilson, you probably have a really good chance to raise that number and raise that number by a significant margin over even what Jameis Winston and Bailey Zapp were able to provide, because throughout Kirk Cousins and Russell Wilson's careers, they've always been better than Jameis Winston, right? So there is reason to believe that they would be a significant improvement upon them. I understand that the names of Russell Wilson in 2025 and Kirk Cousins does not carry much cachet or trust. But what these guys are proficient starting quarterbacks in the NFL. Like, they will be reasonably decent at the position. I'm not saying that these guys are going to come in, be the savior of your football team, but the last 2 years, these guys were able to be 500 or above on their football teams. Russ, 2 years in a row now, right, was above 500 with the Denver Broncos, was above 500 with the Pittsburgh Steelers last year. So there might not be elite Russell Wilson in there anymore. There's not enough to justify paying Russell Wilson $45 million. But if you're giving him 10 with another 10 in incentives, so about 20 if he hits all of his incentives, then it's not really that big of a deal to get Russell Wilson in here, and it would be a significant improvement. Let's use that same points number that we use for Jameis Winston, Deshaun Watson, and the Browns overall to see what kind of a difference that would make for this football team. Kirk Cousins last year averaged about 19.85 points a game in his start. So whenever Kirk Cousins was out there, the Falcons scored about 20 points in a game. That would have been about 24th in the NFL. So all of a sudden, you bring in Kirk Cousins. If he performs to the level that he did last year, which you expect him to be a little bit better, given that he's going to go into an offense that fits him a little bit better in Cleveland, and familiarity with the offensive coordinator and head coach in Kevin Stefanski, you expect him to improve, right? But even if he doesn't improve, he would have been about 24th last year. That's a 12-spot improvement from where you were in 2024. So that's a significant jump. Russell Wilson averaged about 23 points every time he started a game for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They scored about 23 points. If you average that out per 17 games, that would have given him a number that would have ranked about 13th in the NFL, which would be a massive jump for the Cleveland Browns offense if they were able to get it. Now, there's more questions about if Russ is a true fit for the Browns offense than Kirk Cousins, simply because we've seen Kirk with Kevin Stefanski before. We've never seen Kevin Stefanski with Russell Wilson before. But even if we use Kirk, right, as a low-end estimate of what the improvement can be from going from the two worst quarterbacks that played football all of last year, starting the majority of your games, to starting a journeyman starting quarterback level level guy like a Kirk Cousins or a Russell Wilson, that jump is significant and that jump matters, right? Because Kirk Cousins, again, would have given you about 18 points a game. Kirk Cousins would have given you about 20 points a game, which is a significant improvement to what the Browns had. That would be about 79 more points over the season than the Browns had in 2024. And that 79-point difference, like think about how much more of a difference 79 more points would have made to the 2024 Browns. The Browns scored 79 more points last year. That would have been good enough to flip 7 of the Browns' losses into wins, which means the Browns could have been a 10-win team last year with a quarterback who could just give you middle of the road level play at best in Kirk Cousins. But that's the difference from going from 32 in points scored to 24. And Kirk Cousins is a solid bet to get you there, right? Russell Wilson is a solid bet to get you there. These are former Pro Bowl players. These are guys who have still played, not at a high level, but at a proficient level in the NFL recently. In Kirk's situation, he has experience. In Russ's situation, he's done it the last 2 years, and he's put up better numbers than most people realize. Now, again, I'm not going to sit here and tell you Russell Wilson's good or Kirk Cousins is good. There are in that like slightly above mediocre to average range. Like I'm not going to be, celebrating and throwing a parade because you got one of these two at quarterback. But the upgrade from what they had last year would be significant enough to where it could have swung the Browns into a 10-win team if they just had this level of quarterback play last year. It's a significant difference. It's the difference between playoffs and having the second pick in the draft. Another thing that I don't think enough people acknowledge is Kirk Cousins is going to be better, right? That is a good bet. He's going to be better than DTR and Deshaun Watson. There's not a lot of doubt about that, right? There's not a chance, not a high chance that he's worse than who those two were last year. There's always a chance, but it's not a high chance. Same thing with Russell Wilson. I think we tend to overestimate the ceiling of rookie quarterbacks and underestimate how low the floor can be on a rookie quarterback, because it's not a guarantee if you draft Cam Ward number 2 that you get a significant improvement over what Deshaun Watson and DTR were able to provide, given that you're starting a quarterback in their first year in the NFL. Same thing with Shedeur Sanders. It's not a guarantee that you can improve that position by any significant way, because you know what Deshaun Watson looked like last year? A rookie quarterback. You know what DTR looked like last year? A rookie quarterback. So if you really want to improve that number, drafting a quarterback at 2 is not this guaranteed solution to fix it. If you really want to improve the number, a veteran quarterback is a much more secure way to go to make that number better for the next upcoming season, which is why I think the Browns should opt for a veteran quarterback, because I do think there's a lot more juice they could squeeze out of this team if they can just get competent quarterback play out the position. And I don't think competent quarterback play is a guarantee with the number 2 overall pick this year. Sure, it could happen. Obviously, it could happen. But is it more of a sure bet than 2 guys who have done it at a Pro Bowl level before? I don't think so. No, Kirk Cousins and Russell Wilson are not great long-term fixes. Nobody is arguing that that is the case when they say, hey, let's just grab Kirk or Russ for a year. But what people are saying is that this team has enough that you can elevate Kirk or Russ to being a 10-win team. Because, again, the difference between what Kirk Cousins was able to do last year in Atlanta, which is put up about 20 points a game with that Atlanta offense, and what the Browns were able to do is 79 points. And 79 points would be enough for the Browns to go from a 3-win team to a 10-win team last year. You're talking about flipping 7 losses last year into wins simply because you could score a below league average amount of points, right? 24 is below 16. It's not the average line, but it's still significantly higher than 32. And I think that's what's being underestimated by a lot of Browns fans, is the difference of going from 32 to 22, right? It's not sexy. Nobody's going to get excited about it. Nobody's going to crown Kevin Stefanski his third Coach of the Year award because of it. But it would make a tangible difference to this football team and give them a chance to be a playoff team next year versus taking a shot in the dark at quarterback, which gives you a higher chance of repeating the level of play that you had last year, right? Because last year we had, almost sub rookie quarterback play. So if you start a rookie next year, there's a chance that you might get that again versus a veteran quarterback. That is why, for me, I'm more in favor of just playing the veteran. One, because I'm not in love with this draft class. I don't think there's a long-term quarterback solution here. If I'm shopping for short-term options at quarterback, I'd rather go with a veteran because, again, I think these guys, like Shedeur at best, I think he will be a solid midterm option, right? A guy who can be your Andy Dalton. I think Cam Ward lives in that Jay Cutler, Baker Mayfield range where they're good enough quarterbacks to start for you for a year potentially. Not for a year, but for a while potentially. But you're always going to want to get better than where you are at quarterback because you can't get over the hump with these guys, right? Like, that's the range of these two quarterbacks in this class for me. And that's just not enough for me to sacrifice number 2 overall pick. I'd rather wait until the value is better for that kind of quarterback, whether these guys fall to like the late 20s, then all of a sudden it makes a lot more sense. Or if somebody in next year's class provides a similar level of upside, but at a different price than what Shedeur and Cam Ward are going for this draft, or if you can get somebody who has a bit more potential than these two, I prefer waiting on that. And I don't think Kirk Cousins or Russell Wilson would be a bad solution to get you to that point. Right now, I think a lot of people are anxious about the starting quarterback position, which I understand, right? We just want an answer to the question. Just because you draft the answer at number 2 doesn't mean that answer is going to work out. And a lot of people are acting as if drafting a quarterback at number 2 is going to solve that answer in a year where that's not close to being what people are projecting to be the case here at quarterback. Give this offense a floor. Give them a veteran quarterback. A rookie quarterback does not give this offense a floor like a veteran starter would give this offense a floor, right? And I think that's what this Browns offense needs more than anything is a real floor at the position of quarterback, because last year we saw the floor went to hell, and we saw what that did to the offense. It went to hell with it. If the quarterback play, when the quarterback play rised a little bit above and just was in NFL backup quality with Jameis Winston, all of a sudden the offense wasn't the worst offense in the NFL anymore. And that's been my point. I don't think it's that hard to raise that number. I don't think you have to draft somebody at 2 to get that number to be better, and I don't think drafting somebody at 2 is the best bet to make that number better. I believe the Browns need to fix the offense. The Browns need to get better at offense, right? They need to be better at offense than they were last year. All of that stuff is obvious, and all that stuff is true. But how they go about doing it, I don't think we need to overthink it. The Browns' quarterback play was terrible. Yes, the offensive line had issues. Running game wasn't great. All these other things existed with the Browns' offense, and they could continue to be problems. But the main cancer of the Browns' offense was the quarterback play. It was the one thing on that offense that just straight up wasn't at an NFL level for most of the year. If you improve that, you're going to be a much better offense. Maybe not a good offense, but still a much better offense. And I think we're underestimating how much of a difference going from god-awful offense to it's okay, right? Pittsburgh's offense was last year, right? Like, it wasn't great, but it was a big difference, and it was a difference well enough that made them able to get to the playoffs. That's my philosophy on this offseason, I think, and that's, I think, the core of the disagreement I have with some people who watch these videos, who really want to draft the quarterback, is I think that you could fix the offense, at least for temporarily, in different ways. But let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.